I remember after I mentioned that, basically my company commander, who gave me like an award for, this one event 2 months prior, told everybody in my company to basically not talk with me.
Welcome to How I Embraced the Suck, a podcast where you get to hear from veterans what life in the military is really like. I am your host, Walt, and before we start, you should know that I do not censor the show in any way. You have been warned. Hey folks, just wanted to acknowledge that my audio on this recording is not the silky smooth perfection that you have become accustomed to. However, since you are listening to hear what the guest has to say and not the host, I decided to go ahead and release it as it is. Please enjoy.
Yeah, I didn't. So I heard you were in the Marines. You got out. Did you deploy at all?
I got very lucky. I did not deploy.
Okay.
I mean, I remember being in, and oftentimes, like, you'd have your, I guess this happened with other companies too, but sometimes your battalion commander sets up a whole, big group meeting and, tells you you're going to go somewhere and fight somewhere. Like one time they said, okay, you better pack your badge, not pack your badge right now, but, it's likely that we're going to be going to Syria. I mean, I heard that one time, but I was lucky enough to not be deployed, which I'm very happy about. Of course, at the time, you really want to. I mean, that's
why you are there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, today we got Andrew, a former Marine who will now sell anything he can to buy Monero.
That's right. I want to talk to you about the special token I have for you today.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, yeah. So you were in the Marines, like you were saying. You weren't actually deployed. What did you do in the Marines? What was your MOS?
Yeah, so my MOS was 0321, so Marine Reconnaissance. And for anybody who does not know what Marine Reconnaissance is, it is essentially one of the two special operations jobs or special operations capable jobs that the Marine Corps has to offer. So the training is similar to SEAL training, to Army Ranger training. It's like that of the Marine Corps. And so my class at the time had, at the end of recon training, had an 81% attrition rate. So meaning, 81% of people who said they wanted to be recon Marines either just failed or quit. And at the time, that was a very enticing thing for me,
right.
To go
hard.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 100%. That's basically what it is, And it's also like, I mean, those groups, they do quote cool stuff. They jump out of planes. They do underwater. They do diving. They do raids. They do just all this stuff, and they make you look really cool, of course.
Right.
And one thing in that regard, one thing I talk about with the military is this natural desire that men have for war. I don't think is entirely a bad thing, right?
Sure.
Like there's something honorable in that. Somebody wants to put their life on the line and protect their loved ones. That's a very admirable virtue. But unfortunately, the state corrupts that virtue. It takes young men who've been sitting in these government indoctrination camps for 13 years.
Sure.
So they're about ready to go insane. So they basically can either go to college or join the military. Obviously, you have way more options than that, but that's a simplified.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, that's, I joined for many different reasons, but that was my job. Just a ton of training, went to a bunch of different schools, went to foreign weapons, can't speak English, foreign weapons instructor course, our Army Airborne School, free fall, mountain communications, yeah, I mean, just did a bunch of shooting, went to I mentioned free fall.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in the beginning, it was really fun. Like, I really I thought I was doing something good. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Huh. So that's the same as Force Recon?
I mean, now Marine Recon and Force Recon are basically the same things.
Okay.
They were a lot different before the existence of MARSOC. So basically what happened is
Gotcha.
SOCOM, which is Special Operations Command,
Uh-huh.
they give funding to the Green Berets, the Navy SEALs, like every special operations job in each branch of the military.
Right.
And they did not. They took a bunch of Force Recon Marines. They took all these Force Recon Marines and said, "Okay, you're MARSOC now." And MARSOC is like the Green Berets of the Marine Corps, and they're under SOCOM. So MARSOC is Marine Special Operations Command. So, and there's like this ongoing debate of, which school's harder? Is Recon training harder? Is MARSOC training harder? And yeah, so that's some context.
Yeah, so essentially, being like special forces, did you have like that? People talk about the camaraderie of SF units where it's a lot less rank. Rank is less important, a lot more respect of skills as opposed to time in service or whatever. Was that the case?
Yeah, I mean that's a really cool thing about, you should say the special operations community is exactly that. Yeah, ranked is not as important. And I remember in recon school, one thing they would constantly do is put newbies like me in charge of sergeants that have been in for 7 years. Just to see what happens and just to break that rank. And by the end of recon training, you're calling officers by their first name. I mean,
right.
and they want you to, because you've just suffered so fucking much together, and that's one thing I really appreciated about the Marine Corps is that, if you're going through legitimate suffering with other people, you're going to grow very close with them. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, again, it's I wish I believed in the U.S. military, because it would be such a cool thing to support. Sure. I mean, for me, that was just a dream job, to shoot guns all day, just hang out with like-minded people. Like, man, like who wouldn't want that?
Right. Yeah. So did you finish your contract and then got out at the end of that, or did you quit early or get out early?
Yeah, so when you join the military, they lie to you a lot on many different things, but one concrete lie they tell you is, once you sign this piece of paper, you can't get out of the military.
Right.
And that's not true. When you sign that piece of paper, there's a section in that piece of paper which says that basically I am not a conscientious objector. For anybody listening that doesn't know what a conscientious objector is, a conscientious objector is a legal classification for military members or people who choose not to participate in military service because their conscience does not allow them. And the thing that really pisses me off is the propaganda. There's clearly propaganda against conscientious objection. Mm-hmm. But I forget what's that one movie? They've got all their fucking movies that Hollywood produces and the DoD pays for. Literally
about
the DoD.
World War I?
Yeah, it was. I think it was World War II, and it was that skinny guy who he was basically like this. I mean, I should say I admire his virtues, and I think that's a good thing. I'm just describing what they're portraying.
Desmond Dodd.
Yes, Desmond Dodd.
Hacksaw Ridge.
Ridge. Yeah. So basically, that's what they want you to think when you see a conscientious objector. They want you to see a weak, skinny Christian dude who doesn't want to kill people.
Sure.
And I mean, for me, that's just not the case. I'm happy to die for something I believe in. I think a lot of men are. I don't think that virtue is absent outside of the military. But once you realize that what you're fighting for is not for freedom, but in fact the opposite, you're not a man if you continue supporting it. And that's the thing that, I'll talk to a lot of guys that get out of the military and start really doing some thinking, and they come to the same conclusion. I mean, they're not proud of what the U.S. has done in the Middle East, and
sure,
that's a difficult thing to come with. I have a hard time though, because sometimes I'll talk with some friends that are still in the Marine Corps, and I'll bring up these things, and it's so obvious at this point. You have no excuse to not. If somebody sends you a video of Building 7, a third building collapsing on 9/11 that nobody knows about,
sure,
and you just choose to look the other way, I mean, what kind of a person does that make you? You don't have to be a rocket scientist.
Even if you do have a logical explanation, still at least try to explain it instead of just ignoring it, right? Or someone is able to has what they believe is a logical explanation.
Well, that's the thing, is there's no logical explanation for it, for Building 7.
Sure,
the logical explanation is office fires, which is fucking crazy.
Right. No, yeah. I'm just saying, like, as an example, compared to the military, if you're going to be in the military and fight, at least have make an attempt to explain why you're doing that, instead of just ignoring what's going on. Does that make sense? I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's what
they confront the question.
No. Yeah. That's a good point. And that's the excuse, is it's not my job to determine what I'm doing.
Exactly.
It's my commander's job. It is, they often blame it on it's the politician's job. George Carlin has a funny bit where he talks about war and all that, but he says people always blame the politicians for starting the wars. I blame the troops for showing up.
Oh yeah. Yeah, right.
It's the same mentality as police officers. I saw this meme the other day. It showed a cop crossing his arms and all stern. And it says, look, bud, I don't make the laws. I just choose to violently enforce them.
Yeah, right. So, okay, so I made a note because I had another question. But so you utilize the conscientious objector to get out early? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. So
okay.
When I was
that like, what was the process there? Yeah.
Well, it sucked. It was hands down the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life. And I grew up in a very militaristic family. I grew up watching these BS movies that like I mentioned, the DoD pays for and signs off to and gives approval for.
Sure.
Basically, the way it works, by the way, just a side note, is if you are like a big movie producer and you want to have military stuff in your movie,
right?
The DoD will let you, go on somebody's base or you use equipment or whatever for the movie, but they have to give approval for certain things. So one example of this is Independence Day. If you've ever seen that movie, Will Smith was not supposed to be in the military in that movie. Like, the original plot of that script was he was just going to be a dude, just a normal guy.
Okay.
And the DoD said that you should make him a military member. Anyways.
Oh, because he's the hero of the show, or the hero of the movie. Oh, right. Yeah. And then there's the anchoring moment where you see the flag at the end or whatever.
100%. Yeah. There you go. Yeah, so that was a side note. But my point is, to get back to your question, I really believed in the U.S. military. And and that's why I wanted to be a recon Marine. So when I was I'm sitting on base, and I got really into Ron Paul, and I read In the Fed, and I got really into the Austrian school of thought at that point, and I read The Creature from Jekyll Island, which, for anybody that's not aware of The Creature from Jekyll Island, that book basically talks about the inception of the Federal Reserve, how the Federal Reserve functions, and it basically shows you that the central banking system is an absolute scam and a cartel, and they profit from war. And anyways, to tie it all off, I also read a book called War is a Racket, written by a man named Smedley Butler.
Right. Yeah.
Smedley Butler is somebody who you were taught about in Marine Corps boot camp. You're taught about how he won 2 medals of honor. He was a major general in the Marine Corps. He's this badass dude. And they conveniently leave out the part where he gets out of the military and writes an anti-war book.
Right.
How funny
right.
is that? At that point, the truth is difficult to, I mean, once it's there, it's there. I mean, you can't just see something and then not see it.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, you know, it just became so difficult for me to believe in what I was doing in the military. Like, you know, just the mentality around me as well, as much as I appreciated a lot of my friends in the military, it really pissed me off seeing this mentality of just order following. And they really do a good job in boot camp of getting you to just become a fucking mindless robot. I mean, they make you say, you can't say me or I, they make you say this recruit. Whenever you're given an order, you have to say kill. Like a lot of the time, they make you say the word kill. They use, you know, you're a body, like just all these things. It's all subliminal, subconscious programming to get you to be less human and to view other people as less human. When in reality, most people are just, they have the same desires. They want to just have good food, have a roof over their heads. They want to have sex. They want to have a, you know, big family. Most people are not psychopaths who want to go kill other people.
Right.
So, yeah, that was a tangent. Where shall we go from here?
Well, no, I was going to ask you, you mentioned you read a lot of books. But yet you were a Marine. Did you do that through audiobooks, or did you take remedial classes on how to read?
Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah, I mean, it was YouTube channels. It was books. It was audiobooks. Watching debates was fun.
Oh yeah, okay.
But yeah, I mean, it's just, you have access to, you can literally, the amazing thing about living today is you have a device in your pocket that can answer pretty much any question that you want answered.
Yeah, no kidding.
And most people look at cat videos with it. So, you know, I mean, the answers are out there. It's just a matter of desiring them.
Sure.
I should circle back because you asked about the process of conscientious objection. So basically, what I did. So 50% of conscientious objection applications are denied. Okay. So when you submit an application, you are taking a risk. And if your package gets denied, they're going to make your life suck for the next however many years.
For sure.
You're stuck, you know?
Yeah.
But luckily, I mean, thank God, truly thank God up in heaven that there is this organization called the GI Rights Hotline. And they're also known as the Center of Conscience and War. And basically what they've been doing since the 70s is helping people not be in the military, especially with Vietnam. And they provide like legal counsel for people in the military. I believe they're helping people with this injection issue as well. Because that's a blatant violation of human rights. And anyway, so they helped me through the process. They helped me through the paperwork. And again, I really thank God that this organization exists. So anyways, long story short, it was a 10-month process. I lost a ton of my friends because, you know, immediately you're going to be labeled as anti-American, hippie, some, you know, just bad labels, right? Because first of all, not only are you seen as a traitor, but you're also somebody that is completely questioning everything that they're doing. And no man, if his income depends on it, is going to like that being questioned.
Right.
So
it's interesting. It's interesting. Think about it. That war is not universally, but almost universally considered to be a last recourse. Like it may be something that has to happen, but it's undesirable when it does happen. And then when you go and say, or when others say, I have a conscientious reason to not participate in this process that most people say is undesirable, then all of a sudden you're the bad guy. When most everybody agrees that would rather not do it. but your unwillingness to participate makes you the bad guy. Interesting.
Yeah,
Does that
I mean,
make sense?
It does make sense. It does make sense. And like I said, like a lot of guys who I knew in the Marine Corps and just vets I've met, they get out and, they start questioning things a lot more. But
right.
Yeah, it's a difficult thing. I mean, this is, especially in American culture, is the military is so much a part of your way of life. I mean, you're supposed to like thank someone for their service if you see them in uniform outside. It's just so ingrained with our culture, and people think that they have such a dependence on the state. They think that there's no way they could possibly be safe without this huge military that's stationed in 700 different locations internationally. Right. It's insanity.
Do you think the thank you for your service thing is a reaction to the Vietnam, the experience of the Vietnam vet? I've wondered that. I tend to how
why would that be?
Just in terms of a lot of Vietnam vets' experience was they came back and they were actively denigrated because they were vets, and then now the next generation feels that they have an obligation to improve on that or make amends for that. Does that make sense? I tend to think that's kind of the case. But maybe I'm not explaining it well.
No, I hear you. It might be. I think that, I mean, when somebody says thank you for for your service, I look at that almost like the mask wearing. I kind of see a similar mentality there, where it's like I'm such a virtuous person. I'm saying thank you for your. I'm not saying everybody who says thank you for your service is this bad person, by the way.
Sure.
But like, there is an element of like, self glorification for that, and it's almost just like the same mentality as people wearing a mask for a virus that has a less than 1% death rate for people. It's just virtue signaling in some ways, and also it's propaganda in others. Like when I hear "thank you for your service," I hear "I don't know shit." Like, it actually used to annoy me a lot when somebody would say "thank you for your service," because it's like, are you kidding me? Have you just buried your head in the fucking sand for the last 20 years? You think the Middle East has actually gotten improved since we did what we did, and there are just so many things that you can look up on the internet from legitimate sources that show that the United States government does not care about your safety. I mean, I forget was it Operation Northwoods? I think it was Operation Northwoods. So basically the CIA proposed this plan to, who was it? I forget the president at the time. I think he was JFK, actually. I'm pretty sure it was JFK. The CIA proposed this plan to stage a bombing on the United States from Cuba so we could go to war with Cuba.
Oh, wow.
This is a publicly visible document.
Yep, that rings a bell.
Yeah. So.
Huh. When you, as soon as it became known in your unit that you were trying for the conscientious objector, or going through that process, how did that affect the camaraderie among the unit? Like even people that the day before we're eating with you, swapping jokes, smoking in the pit, all that stuff. Was there an immediate reaction or what? Yeah,
I mean, it's a tough thing to talk about just because it was such a difficult point. But I mean, I remember after I mentioned that, basically my company commander, who gave me like an award for this one event 2 months prior, told everybody in my company to basically not talk with me.
Cool.
Which was really cool. Yeah, it's great to like suffer with people and like be told that you're all family and all that, and then when you don't want to shoot strangers, that all just magically goes away. But yeah, I mean, there was that. I did have some friends that stuck up for me, and that, you know, I mean, obviously they didn't want to come to the same conclusion.
Yeah.
But like people definitely, I think people that I trained with, particularly in recon training, knew that it wasn't just some bullshit. Like, you know,
yeah, you were the real deal. You weren't looking for a sissy out.
No, absolutely not. And that was probably the most painful thing about it, is like the idea that, you know, like my family members think that it's bad to just get out of the military early.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's this bad thing. I think people just kind of have this natural like aversion to hearing that. They think of like a dishonorable discharge or something like that.
Right.
Yeah, man. But here's the thing. I mean, if you do what you believe is right, your friends may change, the people close in your life may change, but the people that want the same thing are going to be around you. And I think that's a huge issue that we see right now in the world, is so many people they're just doing their job. You know, they know deep down that something is wrong. And everybody has that ability to discern, pretty much, unless you're legitimately a psychopath, which is a very, very, very extremely minimal amount of the population. And the psychopaths are the one at the top.
Yeah.
Literally, they're psychopaths.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah, you get my point.
Yeah. Huh. What was... Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay. All right. The video froze. So I don't know what's up.
Connection in Mexico isn't the greatest sometimes.
Yeah. Well, it could be mine too. I dropped someone on an interview recently. That was pretty annoying.
It's a bummer.
Disappointing. So looking, as you mentioned, you went through all those different schools and different training and stuff. What was the most enjoyable? What was the most enjoyable school that you went through, and why, I guess?
Ooh, it's a good question. Hands down, free fall. So basically the only people who go to free fall school, I should say there are two kinds of jumping in the military. There is what's called line jumping. So you're flying like, let's see if I remember this correctly, 2,000 meters, 3,000 meters, 5,000 meters, something like that. Or no, feet. Shit. You're flying fairly low to the ground, and you're attached to this, like, you have a line on your parachute, and it's attached to the plane. So when you jump out of the parachute, it's naturally pulled, and your parachute deploys. And so the Army has Army Airborne, and they'll stick like hundreds of people in this plane and have them all jump out at the same time. And it's actually pretty dangerous. And so that's line jumping. And then there's airborne, which is actually enjoyable.
Right.
And that's when, you know, you're like 16,000 feet above ground, or there's also high altitude jumps that are like 20, 30,000 feet above ground. I think 30,000. Okay. And that's when you need oxygen, but you're free falling. You're just hanging out in the sky without a parachute for a good amount of time.
Right.
And actually that's a lot safer than the line jumping, because if something happens during free fall, you have a lot of time to deploy your other parachute or something. Sure. Whereas line jumping, it's like, all right, you better think quick because you're going to hit the ground really soon. So, you froze there.
I lost you for a sec. You were saying, if something happens during free fall, you have a lot of time.
Uh-oh.
Oh, crud.
Oh, we broke up. I hear you now.
Yeah. I think, okay, all right. I think it's a little more consistent now.
Cool. We're good.
I've got you. Yep. Okay, so you were saying, man alive, I'm going to run out of paper to write notes on all the issues that I'm causing.
That's all right.
You were saying if you have a problem with free fall, you've got a lot more time to respond to it, and then we lost you right there.
Yeah, basically, so with free fall, I'll tell you what, maybe we should turn our video off. I feel like that would help with a
let's see. I quite honestly don't know how to do that.
There should be an icon in the bottom left.
Let's see. I do not have that capability.
Huh.
Or if I do, I'm not seeing it.
Okay, there should be like a video icon bottom left, maybe.
Oh, you know what? That's why. Yep, there we go. Got it. I was panned over too far.
Okay, I think that's what I do on my podcast when I have bad connection. Should help.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So.
Yeah. So free fall basically it's a lot. Free fall is a lot safer than line jumping because when you if there's some sort of like issue during line jumping, you better figure it out really fast because you're hitting the ground like really soon. But with free fall, you can, you have a lot more time in the sky to just figure it out if you have an issue. So basically the school, free fall school is a lot of fun. They have it out in pretty much the middle of nowhere in Arizona.
Okay.
And the only people who go to free fall school are special operations and people who work directly on planes constantly. So, if there was some sort of issue on the plane, you got to jump out, you go to free fall school.
Right.
And, like I said, it's like in the middle of nowhere, but, you stay at this hotel and nobody knows why. Nobody asks any questions why, but basically like this hotel gives you $200 a week in cash in a white envelope.
Okay.
And it's like, all right. And they give you 2 free beers a day. You get like these coupons.
Oh wow.
So you, like literally like and it's for a month. So you're out there for a month and you wake up early in the morning. You see the sunset as you're driving and you pack your parachute and you have 2 jumps a day and that's it. Of course there are like written tests in there and,
sure.
Quote academic stuff like that. Which there's actually a lot of written tests in the military too. So, and the instructors there are legit. I mean, the instructors there have like thousands and thousands and thousands of jumps. So they're just like these old school, vets who have just like, this is their entire life.
Right.
They just jump out of planes all day. They're obsessed with it. Like that's what they do all the time. And they're just like wizards in the sky, So, yeah, man, it was a lot of fun. Definitely some good times.
Yeah. You pretty much already went over your thoughts on the subject in general, but specifically if a kid, one question I try to ask everybody is, if a kid was to say to you, hey, I'm thinking about going to the military, what would your response be to like a 16 or 17-year-old? How would you answer that?
Yeah.
If they're specifically coming to you for advice, they're not just talking in conversation, but they're like, hey, you were in, I'm thinking about it. What would you advise me? How would you advise me?
It's a great question. And I've had that happen, multiple times since being out. And I've successfully gotten people to not join, or at least influence them to not join.
Right. So
what I would say is, you know what? I think that question really depends on who you're speaking with, to be honest.
Well, true, for sure. But,
yeah, but yes, I mean, I would basically just try and show them that the military is not. I mean, yeah, it's maybe convenient and makes you feel safe to know that you will have a consistent paycheck coming in. You will have a roof over your head. You will have, food 3 times a day. That's nice. Okay. Mm-hmm. That's for somebody that's 18 that doesn't know shit because they've been in school all their life and not the real world and all that. I get it, especially if they're promised free college and that's how they suck people in. Mm-hmm. That's one of the many ways they do it. So just telling them the truth about, okay, do you truly believe that for the last 20 years of the United States military being in all these countries in the Middle East, do you truly believe that this is for your freedom? Do you think we had more freedom 20 years ago or now? Sure. Are the troops really fighting for freedom? And then at that point, I would send them probably something like Building 7. Like, that is just the go-to thing to expose with the U.S. military. I mean, there's so many other things too, but Building 7, I mean, that is just such an obvious thing that can easily be questioned, that the government blatantly ignores. It's not mentioned one time in the entire, I believe, almost 400-page report on 9/11. Not mentioned one time.
Oh, right.
You know?
Sure.
So, yeah, I mean, that's what I would say. I have a little cousin, actually, that was going to join. And, you know, for many reasons, for the security and the movies and all that. And I'm so happy that he didn't. I mean, he's just been working in construction now for the last 2 years. And he's like got a good amount of savings now. And he's not in debt. And he's not doing something that he doesn't morally agree with. Like,
right. Yeah, I think that's a big thing, is people's just the ability to make moral decisions on your own.
Yeah. I mean, there's something to be said about sacrificing moral autonomy and being, you know, in the military, in boot camp, they call it instant obedience and willingness to orders. And, yeah, I mean, that mentality is just so ingrained. I mean, that's why I think that's why they have you yell in boot camp as well, just because, I mean, if you're yelling something, you're not thinking about anything else. It's in your skull, your soul. You're screaming it.
Sure.
You know. So, I'm very hopeful for the future, though. I think that I mean, if you look at the Army's enlistment rates, they've gone down quite a lot, which is very good to see. Yeah, so I think a lot more people are becoming skeptical. And plus, the U.S. military is just collapsing, too, because of social correctness. Like, I don't know if you've seen their recent...
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So...
At best, it's affecting its ability as a fighting force. You know, if you believe in the... if you believe the narrative of the need for a military, but you honestly look at the military and how that is affecting it, it's reducing its effectiveness as a fighting force to have the require or to adjust the requirements the way they've been doing, and just the culture. So
absolutely, I mean, I remember with infantry units, like, you know, women would try and go in infantry, and they definitely get it easier than men do, and a lot of people were pissed off about that. And it's just not, like, warfare is not a feminine thing. I'm sorry. Like, if that makes me a sexist, like, whatever. I'm not a sexist, but, like, that's just, there are clear differences between men and women. And ultimately what they really want is just combining of the sexes. They don't want men to be men, and they don't want women to be women. They want men to be whipped by women, and they want women to just basically be miserable all day, go to these jobs, think that having a career is more important than having children, which is just so sad. I mean, just anecdotally speaking, personally in my life, every single woman I know that's like fulfilled in life and happy in life, they have a family. And same thing with a man, of course, but like I just, it's such a shame that particularly the millennial generation and women are getting brainwashed in college to think that it's just bad to be, you know, producing human life and, you know, changing the world that way. Like, it's such an amazing, honorable ability that women have.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's just, society is changing quite a lot, you know, but, yeah, kind of a side tangent.
Yeah. You mentioned you're a Christian. Oh, I know quite a few of the people who listen to the show are also, as am I. What, kind of a two-part question, before your mindset changed and you were in the military, how did being a Christian affect, or how was it affected by being in the military? And then afterward, kind of the same. Once your mindset changed and you were looking to get out of the military, again, how did being a Christian both affect your time, and then also how did getting out affect your relationship with the Lord?
Yeah, so
big question.
No, yeah, definitely, and a very important one. I mean, I remember being in the military and seeing one guy get a tattoo with like Mother Mary and an M16 right next to it. So ideology is very important. At the time when I was joining the military, I was lucky enough to go to a Christian high school, private high school. And so I talked with a lot of people about that and this relationship between being a Christian and being in the military. And of course, I got a bunch of different perspectives on that. There are a lot of Christians, I would say the majority of Christians, who think it's just totally fine to be in the military and be a Christian at the same time.
Sure.
And others are complete pacifists that don't want any form of violence at all. And so for me at the time, I mean, I was a Christian in high school. I'm still a Christian today. And I see a lot of Christians just rationalizing it. I rationalized it. I thought, the idea was, okay, I know the military isn't perfect, but I think that, you need to have moral people in the military who won't do horrible things, right?
Yeah.
If
it's going to exist.
If it's going to exist. Yeah. So that was basically my mentality. And, but I mean, man, when I was in, I just realized it's like trying to change the mafia from inside. It's not,
okay.
It's just not doable. So, and I also really started questioning the idea of, okay, can you be in the military and be a Christian at the same time? Like how can you hold an M16 and go listen to a politician and go somewhere on Earth that you probably couldn't even locate on a map and shoot someone because another man told you to? Like, how is that Christian in any way? And I don't think I don't think Christianity and being in the military are compatible. I do believe that you should defend yourself. I do believe that. But there's a huge difference between self-defense and, aggression, like military aggression.
Right.
Like going to other countries and starting wars that we shouldn't be involved with. That's an entirely different thing than somebody invading your home or trying to hurt your family.
Sure.
So, yeah, I mean, the more I read the Bible and the more I study kind of like the occult or the parasites or the elite, whatever you want to call it, the more I know that there's legitimacy in Jesus and God. Like these, if you look at these people who run the world, like Epstein, the Clintons, it's people way higher than that, Rothschilds, central banks, all that. They're really into the whole Satan thing. Like if you're listening to this and you have no idea what I'm talking about, like go on Brave or DuckDuckGo. Look up a woman named Maria Abramovich, Abramovic, I believe is her last name, Maria Abramovich. And she's like this Hollywood artist who, is in pictures with Jay-Z and politicians. And she did a commercial with Microsoft. And anyways, very popular modern artist. Look up her art and tell me if that's art. And really, like if you're listening to what I'm saying and you have the ability to look this woman up and you've never heard of her before, I mean, that it's clearly very dark. It's clearly very satanic. And I think that I think there's real authority in God. To me, it makes perfect sense. Like these people, are Luciferian and they want everybody to be an atheist or the New Age is a new rabbit hole that I've been going into as well. Like the New Age stuff is very popular. The meditation, the belief in the universe and energy and, that's what they want. They don't want people to have like true Christian ideals. And, you know, I think the 99% of churches in the United States are completely just, you know, they're 501c3 nonprofits. Like they're going to, obviously they're not going to question the government if they don't want to bite the hand that's essentially feeding them, or at least not, you know, not taking their money.
Sure.
So yeah, man, I mean, as far as like Christianity and my views on freedom, I view Jesus like he was an anarchist. I don't, you know, he says one man cannot serve two masters, and the state is not my master. The state doesn't even exist. The state is just another human being, another man who thinks he can control me by signing a piece of paper. And I know that's not legitimate authority. It's a really, really interesting relationship between libertarian ideals and Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
You've got a few things to mention that you do personally. Go ahead and mention all that stuff.
Yeah. So I work full time in the Bitcoin space. I am the chief business development officer of a company called Bitcoin Reserve, and that's a Bitcoin only brokerage for Europe. And so yeah, just that's basically where all my time goes. I also write articles. I have a podcast called the Exit Plan Podcast. Talk about all this stuff: Bitcoin, freedom, the pursuit of truth, all that stuff. Okay. And yeah, and then if you want to follow me on Twitter, my handle is Andrew_J_Howard. And just other than that, spend my free time hanging out in Mexico. So if anybody's near the Puerto Vallarta area, like, feel free to hit me up.
Oh yeah, and you do jiu-jitsu too, also, right?
Yes, I can't forget about that. Yeah, I do jiu-jitsu as well. That's like my Bitcoin and jiu-jitsu are like the two things that keep me sane.
Yeah, so. Yeah. I've not gotten into it myself, but I have a bunch of friends that enjoy that. The whole
you got to do it, man. Yeah. It's a great time, and it's really not like compared to other, you know, martial arts or anything. It's really not that physically taxing on your body, or not as much, you know, because you're not throwing punches.
Sure, like in terms of long-term injury, you mean?
Yeah.
Sure.
So,
yeah, you hear about like karate guys, and their goal is to get microfractures in their bones so that it heals and gets stronger. And I'm just like, that sounds correct, but that sounds like something
why?
I would do. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you're devoting your life to it, I guess. But
yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
I
used to do that stuff. Those were the days.
So no Monero then. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, no Monero. No, I used to actually. That was the last shitcoin that I used to hold before I sold everything for Bitcoin. Was Monero.
Yeah,
because it's such like it has such a good pitch to the freedom community. Like, you know, but people are not storing their value in Monero. Like, why would you buy Monero and hold Monero if nobody else is? I mean, other people are, of course, but I mean, compared to Bitcoin and the network effect that Bitcoin has, the first mover advantage, the politicians adopting it, the El Salvador adopting it, the sports players getting paid in it, the huge companies announcing that they're going to adopt it. Like in Mexico, there's a company called Electra, which is a $15 billion company. They just announced that they're going to accept Bitcoin. Like, they're not taking Monero, they're not taking Ethereum. And this is where Bitcoin maximalism comes in. Is Bitcoin maximalists are not, you know, toxic, mean people. We just realize that network effect is a very real thing. Mm-hmm. And human beings do not want to use 20 different kinds of money. And at this point, anything other than Bitcoin is gambling. You know, somebody just wants to buy the next Bitcoin. Like, Bitcoin is the next Bitcoin.
Everybody wants to ride the next ride to the moon on a new coin kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah, so I've got a question. This is really off topic for the show, but who cares about the listener? It's on brand for what you're talking about, and then the whole liberty thing. Do you have any concerns or how do I phrase it? The reality is that Bitcoin involves data collection. How do you address that with your concerns about liberty and individual liberty? That makes sense?
Yeah, that does make sense.
Yeah, data collection in terms of, I'm not an expert by far, but data collection in terms of the blockchain and transactions being publicly viewable forever, theoretically. How do you address that as somebody who's extremely liberty conscious and concerned about the government and their spying on you, essentially, or individuals?
Yeah, very important question. So, and this is a big reason why people don't have more Bitcoin, and they did in Monero.
Okay. Yeah.
Few different answers. So, okay. So for one thing to keep in mind is, I mean, which do you think would be more easy to audit? A blockchain that is publicly visible or a blockchain that is not? You know, probably
sure.
Right. So that, I mean, Bitcoin must be audited. I mean, that's why we have tens of thousands of people all over the world who run nodes. They're auditing the Bitcoin network.
Right. Okay.
And that is a huge difference between the Federal Reserve and Bitcoin. The Federal Reserve is essentially one node. I mean, I guess, what do they have, like 12 member branches? So what, 12 nodes, you'd say?
Okay.
But I mean, you get my point. Like, it's a central institution which is not publicly audited. You know, there was Trump said he would audit the Federal Reserve when he was running for president.
Sure.
Like,
yeah.
That's the thing, you know? So that's an important concept to keep in mind. The other concept I would keep in mind is, all right, the same way that haters on Bitcoin said, you know, Lightning's never gonna be a thing, and it's taken years, and there's still no Lightning Network. Just like people used to say with Lightning Network, you know, they would say, okay, it's been years and Lightning still hasn't come out, and it's never gonna happen. And I'd picture the same thing with privacy. Picture the same thing with privacy. And there are other ways to use Bitcoin which are more private. Lightning is one example. Lightning is not, I mean, it's not on chain. And the way Chainalysis and CipherTrace and all these companies that suck and have contracts with the US government, they trace things through the blockchain. So that's one kind of answer. There's also an article written by the founder of Spectre. His name is Moritz, and he wrote an article about the Liquid network, how that should help with privacy as well. Taproot obviously has come out as well. That's another privacy feature. So you get my point, right? Like there are,
there's market solutions for
100%. If you think that Bitcoin is just never going to be improved upon, like, that's nuts. And that's not the case. There's so many different people working to improve Bitcoin in so many different ways. And the core thing is, you don't want something to be easily changed. Like, you don't want your monetary policy to be easily changeable. That is the opposite of what you want. The Federal Reserve changes its monetary policy constantly. And I mean, if something is difficult to change, or actually I should say, if something is easy to change, that means it's centralized, right? I mean, it's much easier to make decisions, quick decisions from a top-down approach.
And also less stable.
And also less stable. And that's what you see with Ethereum. Yes. Yeah. And less predictable. Yeah. I mean, that requires trust. Yeah, exactly. Well, it's not even hate. It's just like pointing out a fact. Like, some people think Ethereum is just this amazing thing, and they have no idea what they're talking about. It's not like, it is the exact opposite of what we are trying to achieve. And it's the same thing as the pre-existing financial system. So, yeah. And then I'll say one last thing about the privacy topic. Like, I do acknowledge that right now, technically speaking, on-chain Bitcoin could be tracked by like a large company. I mean, again, there are ways to not have that happen. I mean, there's also CoinJoin too.
Right.
But like the question you have to ask yourself is, okay, well, what's more important? Like, is inflation? I mean, how isn't that not the most important thing that literally every human on Earth is dealing with right now? Mm-hmm. We're $289 trillion in global debt. It's fucking insane. The United States government is almost $30 trillion in national debt. Mm-hmm. That is insane. I mean, people, to me, my priority is preserving my purchasing power.
Right.
So,
right.
And again, plus, yeah. I should also say, like, the idea that the U.S. government can just track every single Bitcoin transaction that people do and just have this complete surveillance state, no, there's no way. And do you think that the United States government is even going to be able to pay for that at the point where Bitcoin becomes super popular, where people lose faith in the United States dollar? Absolutely not.
Sure. Huh. Yeah, well, I appreciate that, the way you phrase that, because as you were saying in the beginning, talking about, or I think maybe I mentioned it, but how when someone's confronted with a criticism of what they're doing, it's important to be a man and address the question instead of just ignoring it. So the way you phrase that of how you acknowledge that there is the potential for tracking of Bitcoin purchases, but then you address then you have a solution and an answer and multiple of them. I think I appreciate that. That definitely gives, that's a much more honest answer than just saying, well, Bitcoin's perfect. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I'm not, I mean, that's another thing I like about.
You're a maximalist, but you're an honest maximalist.
Yeah, I mean, that's so the thing with maximalists is the integrity of Bitcoin maximalists is, generally speaking, significantly higher than the integrity of somebody just into crypto or something like that. I'm not saying everybody's a scammer. Okay. Like some people think Bitcoin maximalists just call everybody scammers. I'm not saying that, but
only because they are. No.
I mean, yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah, but I mean, you get my point, right? Like me talking about Bitcoin to you or to my family member, like my aunt's $100 weekly purchase makes no difference to me. Like I have it's not like that's making the Bitcoin price go up.
Right.
And Bitcoin maximalists are willing to be called closed-minded. They're willing to be, labeled as toxic. Mm-hmm. But really, like almost every single Bitcoin maximalist I know is just, they're a solid person, and almost all of them have owned shitcoins in the past and sold them for Bitcoin now. And it's just a great community of people that care about freedom. I mean, it's like they're all basically libertarians who actually have money, pretty much. Right. Those are Bitcoin maximalists. Like the Libertarian Party, it's in the anarcho-capitalist movement, all that. It's just a lot of bro hippies, like Bitcoiners actually have the ability to do something about their desire for freedom in the world.
Sure. Huh. So, okay, yeah. One last question then. Which you just kind of sparked my thought. Individual liberty, or what's more important, to work toward individual liberty for yourself, or liberty for the world as a whole?
Yeah, so I think an important thing, we need to define liberty. Most people can't even define the word liberty.
Sure.
And, liberty, freedom is what you have when no one is forcing their will upon you. That's freedom.
Okay.
And so, I mean, I'll say this. When I was young, I wanted to change the world, and everybody just wants to change the world, right?
Right.
But then I realized that that's just not possible.
Yeah.
And the most effective way you can actually change the world is by changing yourself. Like if you are not living your life in accordance with the way you believe other people should live your life, and you're still just talking, you're not doing anything productive.
Sure. Yeah.
So
that's a good point.
Yeah. And you also can't help anybody out if you are not established yourself. So what my goal right now is just to be as free as humanly possible. I think that in freedom, there are many different kinds of freedom. There's financial freedom. There's, freedom as far as dependence on, food supplies. They're all different kinds, but I know for a fact that is my mission in life, to live the most free life possible and to show other people that they can do it as well. And I think there's a very deep spiritual side to this, where, God, I view God as freedom. Because freedom is peace.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
And I view, there's that quote by Benjamin Franklin, rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. Like, holy shit. Think about that. That's such a rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. There's really something to that, and in Mexico, like I'll just go to these towns and, these places that are very free, and you can just feel the freedom. You can see people happier. You can see it's just a beautiful place to be. And I see God in that,
Sure.
So I think God is really, like, God is glorified in free societies.
Just through the act of the reality of being free.
Yeah, because if you're imposing your will on another human being, you're violating the golden rule. There are tons of different names for it. There's natural law, there's God's law, the golden rule, the non-aggression principle, but basically the idea that everybody's taught when they're 5. Just don't hit other people, don't steal from other people. Somebody's not hurting you, you have no right to hurt another person. And somehow we through this schooling and through the family unit being broken down and through all these things, people just make exceptions to that basic moral principle when it comes to the state. They're okay with a police officer, violating innocent people's rights. They're okay with they say they're just doing their job, So
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the individual responsibility is pretty critical. It goes both ways. It allows you to take responsibility for yourself, and it also enables you to give others the liberty to be responsible for their own decisions.
Yeah, that's absolutely what God did with us. God isn't micromanaging everything, He gave us free will. He gave us the freedom to do what we want. If we want to mess up, we can mess up. If we want to do good things, we can do good things. But like that is exactly what God did. He just let people have free will.
Thank you for listening to this episode of How I Embraced the Suck. If you enjoyed the show, tell a friend. And as my Girl Scout den mother used to say, stay frosty.
Veterans believe in like Bitcoin and libertarianism and all that stuff.